In the quiet suburbs of Dallas, Texas, the Reynolds family lived a life that, from the outside, looked flawless. Mark Reynolds, 37, was a financial advisor with a stable career, while his wife, Emily, 34, was a homemaker who occasionally volunteered at the local community center. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, both in elementary school. Their home was the kind people pointed at when they drove by. Freshly painted shutters, a trim lawn, and a welcoming porch swing that completed the picture of domestic bliss. But beneath that carefully painted image, Emily felt something missing. Her days blended into one another. Waking up early to prepare breakfast, taking the kids to school, running errands, folding laundry, cooking dinner, and smiling at the neighbors when she didn't feel like smiling at all. Mark, though loving in his way, had become distant. His work consumed him, and by the time he returned home, he was too exhausted to notice the loneliness creeping into Emily's heart. One Friday evening, as she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair before heading to a neighborhood gathering, Emily studied her reflection. She still looked young, her hazel eyes bright and her smile warm, but she felt invisible. Mark walked into the room, briefly kissed her cheek, and said, "You look great," without really looking at her. Then he went back to checking his emails. That night, at the neighborhood barbecue, Emily laughed a little louder than usual, drank a little more wine, and allowed her gaze to wander. She caught the eye of a man she hadn't noticed before, a newcomer to the neighborhood. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with quiet confidence. His name, she would soon learn, was Daniel Carter. As the evening went on, Daniel's attention lingered on Emily in ways that Mark's hadn't in years. When he asked her a simple question, "So, do you like living here?" it felt like someone was finally seeing her. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt the thrill of being desired. She knew deep down that this moment was the beginning of something dangerous. The following week, Emily couldn't get Daniel out of her mind. Every detail replayed in her thoughts. The way his eyes lingered on hers, the warmth of his laugh, the ease with which he spoke to her. It was strange, almost unsettling, how much she craved that attention. Mark had been buried in work again, spending late nights in his home office, leaving Emily to tuck in the kids and sit alone in the living room with a glass of wine. She told herself it wasn't Mark's fault. He was providing for the family, doing his duty. But still, she longed for something more, something that made her feel alive. When Saturday came, Emily found herself at the local grocery store. She was reaching for a bag of oranges when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Seems like everyone shops on Saturday mornings," Daniel said with a playful grin. Her heart skipped. She turned, pretending surprise, though part of her wondered if she had secretly hoped to run into him. "Daniel, hi. Settling into the neighborhood?" she asked, keeping her tone casual. "Trying to," he replied, his eyes locking on hers. But it helps when you run into friendly faces. Their conversation was harmless on the surface. Small talk about the neighborhood, the weather, and local restaurants. Yet, beneath every word was an undercurrent of something more. Emily felt it. Daniel felt it. And though neither of them acknowledged it, the attraction was undeniable. That evening, back at home, Emily prepared dinner, while Mark sat scrolling through his phone at the kitchen counter. She told him about running into Daniel, but Mark only mumbled a distracted, "That's nice." Emily bit her lip, the frustration bubbling silently inside her. Daniel had looked at her like she mattered. Mark, her husband, barely lifted his eyes. Later, lying in bed, Emily stared at the ceiling. She knew she was playing with fire, but for the first time in years, the flame of desire had been reignited, and she wasn't sure she wanted to put it out. The following week, Emily found herself restless. She busied herself with chores, but her thoughts constantly drifted back to Daniel. Every memory of their brief encounters replayed in her head. The way he smiled, the tone of his voice, how he made her feel visible again. One Wednesday afternoon, after dropping the kids off at school, Emily stopped by a small coffee shop downtown. She needed a break from the monotony, or at least that's what she told herself. As she ordered her latte, she heard someone behind her clear their throat. "Guess we have the same taste in coffee," Daniel said, holding up his cup with a grin. Emily laughed nervously. Or maybe you're following me, she teased, though part of her secretly wished it were true. They sat together at a corner table, sunlight pouring through the window, and the conversation flowed effortlessly. Daniel asked about her hobbies, her dreams, her life beyond the walls of her home. It had been years since anyone asked Emily about her, not just about the kids, dinner, or errands. With Daniel, she felt like a woman again, not just a wife and mother. But as their laughter filled the cozy cafe, a heavy sense of guilt crept into her chest. She wasn't doing anything wrong, she told herself. It was just coffee, just conversation. Yet, deep down, she knew this was more than that. Before they parted, Daniel leaned in slightly, his voice lower, softer. I hope this isn't the last time we run into each other. Emily smiled, though her heart pounded in her chest. We'll see. That night, back at home, Mark barely noticed her silence. He ate dinner quickly, checked his emails, and went to bed early, leaving Emily awake and conflicted. She sat in the dark living room, her phone in her hand, fighting the urge to message Daniel. She didn't. Not yet. But the line between harmless friendship and something far more dangerous had already begun to blur. 2 days later, Emily's phone buzzed with a message while she was folding laundry. Her heart skipped as she read the name on the screen, Daniel Carter. Hope your week's going well. Coffee again sometime. Emily stared at the message, her hands trembling slightly. She glanced toward the hallway where the kids were playing video games, and then toward the closed door of Mark's office. He was on another conference call, his voice flat and detached. For a long moment, she hesitated. Then, almost without thinking, she typed back, "Sure, tomorrow morning." The following day, they met at the same cafe. This time, Emily felt a different kind of excitement, a nervous thrill as though she were doing something forbidden. Their conversation was warmer. Their smiles lingered longer, and when Daniel reached across the table, brushing her hand lightly, Emily didn't pull away. Instead, she felt a spark race up her arm. Afterward, she drove home in silence, guilt gnawing at her. She tried to push it away, convincing herself it was innocent, but in her heart, she knew she had crossed a boundary, one Mark would never forgive if he discovered it. That evening, Emily cooked Mark's favorite dinner, roast chicken and mashed potatoes, almost as if she were trying to wash away her guilt with comfort food. But when Mark barely looked up from his laptop to say thank you, frustration and sadness replaced the guilt. Later that night, while Mark slept soundly beside her, Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She replayed Daniel's words, his smile, his touch. She hated herself for wanting more, but the emptiness in her marriage made the temptation impossible to resist. When her phone buzzed on a nightstand with another message from Daniel, "Thinking of you." She didn't hesitate this time. She replied. The first secret had been born, and secrets, Emily knew, had a way of multiplying. The weeks that followed were a blur of stolen moments. Emily and Daniel met at the cafe twice more, each time sitting closer, speaking softer, their touches lingering a little longer. What began as harmless conversation had turned into something more dangerous, a quiet obsession neither of them tried too hard to resist. One Friday afternoon, when Emily stopped by the community center to drop off donation boxes, she was startled to see Daniel waiting outside. "I was just passing by," he said casually, though his eyes betrayed something deeper. Emily's pulse quickened. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "Maybe not," Daniel replied, stepping closer. "But I wanted to see you." The air between them grew heavy. Emily told herself to walk away, to get in her car, to drive home. But instead, she stood frozen, every ounce of loneliness and longing boiling over. When Daniel leaned in and kissed her, the world seemed to stop. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant, but Emily didn't resist. Her lips responded instinctively, hungrily, as if they had been waiting years for this moment. For a fleeting second, she felt alive again, desired, cherished, seen. But as soon as the kiss ended, panic rushed through her veins. She pulled back quickly, her breath shaky. I can't do this," she whispered, though her trembling voice betrayed the lie. Daniel touched her cheek softly. "Emily, you don't have to pretend you don't feel it too. That night, Emily could barely sit through dinner. Mark talked about an upcoming business trip, his mind elsewhere, while Emily pushed food around her plate, her heart still racing from what had happened. When she excused herself early and went upstairs, she caught a reflection in the mirror. Her lips were still tingling, her cheeks flushed. For the first time in her marriage, Emily had crossed a point of no return, and deep down, she knew she would do it again. That Mark's business trip to Chicago came sooner than expected. When he kissed Emily goodbye at the airport drop-off, his mind was already on meetings and client presentations. Emily, however, felt something entirely different, a dangerous freedom in the absence of her husband. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, Emily's phone buzzed. It was Daniel. "He's gone, isn't he?" Her breath caught. She typed back slowly. "Yes, but this isn't a good idea." Seconds later, another reply lit up the screen. "Then why does it feel like the only idea?" Emily's hand trembled as she stared at the message. Every rational thought told her to ignore it, to delete his number, to put an end to whatever this was. But her heart was louder than her head, beating wildly with a longing she couldn't control. An hour later, Daniel was standing at her doorstep. When she opened the door, they exchanged no words at first. His eyes locked onto hers, filled with hunger and desire. Emily's breath shuddered as he stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The silence of the house pressed around them, broken only by the sound of their hurried breaths. Their kiss this time was not tentative. It was urgent, desperate, fueled by months of suppressed emotion and loneliness. Emily felt the walls she had built around herself shatter as she gave in completely. The living room, the couch, the very home she had built with Mark. Suddenly it became the stage for her betrayal. When it was over, Emily sat on the couch, her hair tousled, her heart racing with equal parts thrill and dread. Daniel reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Emily forced a smile, though inside her guilt was screaming. "Yes, I don't know what happens now." Daniel brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Now we stop pretending." But Emily knew it wasn't that simple, because every secret had a way of surfacing, and this one was far too explosive to stay hidden forever. For weeks, Emily and Daniel lived in a dangerous rhythm. Quick meetings at his house when the kids were at school. Long, breathless phone calls late at night. Her voice hushed while Mark slept only a few feet away. The thrill was intoxicating, but so was the constant fear of discovery. Emily began to notice how differently she carried herself. She dressed with more care, lingered longer in front of the mirror, wore lipstick just to run errands. Mark, buried in spreadsheets and late-night calls, didn't question the changes. But the neighbors noticed. Her friends noticed. Even the kids, in their innocent way, began asking why Mommy smiles at her phone so much. One evening, while folding laundry, Mark glanced up at her suddenly. "Who have you been texting so much lately?" he asked casually, though his tone carried a sharper edge than usual. Emily froze, the shirt in her hands trembling slightly. "Just Sarah." She lied smoothly, naming a friend from the community center. "She's planning a fundraiser, and I've been helping." Mark didn't press, but his eyes lingered on her for a moment too long. It sent a shiver of panic down her spine. The following week, Daniel grew bolder. "We can't keep sneaking around forever," he told her as they lay tangled in sheets at his apartment. "Why don't you just leave him?" Emily sat up, her chest tightening. "It's not that simple, Daniel. I have kids, a family, a life built with him. I can't just throw it all away." Daniel's expression hardened. "But you're already throwing away piece by piece." His words cut deep because they were true. Emily was living two lives, one as a devoted wife and mother, the other as a woman consumed by forbidden passion. The walls between those lives were growing thinner, cracking under the weight of her lies. Back at home, Mark began to notice more than just the texts. Missed calls, unexplained absences, her sudden nervousness when his eyes lingered too long. Something was wrong. And though he hadn't said it out loud yet, Emily could feel a suspicion like a storm cloud gathering above them. The perfect suburban dream was beginning to crumble. The tension in the Reynolds household grew heavier with each passing day. Mark had become quieter, more observant. He lingered on Emily's phone when she left on the counter, studied her excuses with narrowed eyes, and asked questions that felt less casual and more deliberate. Emily could feel it. Her secret life was unraveling. One Friday evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Mark walked into the living room where Emily sat curled on the couch, pretending to read a book. He stood there silently for a moment, his gaze sharp, his jaw tight. "Who is he?" Mark finally asked. The book slipped from Emily's hands. Her throat tightened, her heart hammered. What are you talking about?" she stammered, though the lies sounded weak even to her. Mark's voice was steady, but his eyes burned. "Don't insult me, Emily. I've seen the messages. I know you've been meeting someone. Just tell me the truth." Emily's world shattered. She tried to speak, but tears filled her eyes. For a moment, she considered another lie, another excuse. But the weight of everything, the guilt, the deception, the night spent in Daniel's arms, crushed her resolve. "It's Daniel," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean for it to happen," but her words broke into sobs. Mark turned away, pacing the room as if the walls were closing in, his fists clenched, his breathing sharp. "All these years, Emily, everything I gave you, and this is what you do." She reached out, desperate, but he pulled away. "Please, Mark, I was lonely. You were never here, and I—" "Don't you dare blame me for your choices," he snapped, his voice cutting like glass. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Emily sat trembling, tears streaming down her face, while Mark finally spoke with cold finality. "I'll never look at you the same way again. We'll figure out the kids, the house, everything else. But us, we're done." He walked upstairs, leaving Emily alone in the quiet, perfect suburban home that now felt like a prison of her own making. She buried her face in her hands, the reality crashing down. The passion, the thrill, the danger, it had all led to this. Daniel's text would still come, maybe his promises too, but none of it mattered anymore, because in chasing what she thought she wanted, Emily had destroyed what she already had. The suburban dream was gone, and Emily would live with the consequences.